Hey, Hawkeye fans, Chad Leistikow and Tyler Tachman of the Des Moines Register. Tyler, coming off the Iowa men's game last night in Kansas City. I'm over here in College Park. Hawkeyes defeat the Maryland Terrapins 29-13, just like we both predicted, Tyler. We both thought the Iowa would put together its best road performance of the season. I'm just kidding. We both picked Iowa to lose. So what did you see? Really, that was their best first half defensively the whole year, and that really helped Jackson Stratton in his first career start.
Yeah, there were a lot of good things, good storylines, I would say. Jackson Stratton in his first career start at Iowa, I thought he looked really poised. Didn't make any mistakes. That was one of the big keys coming into the game, was just not to turn the ball over, and he had good ball security, made the makeable plays, and then Kaleb Johnson getting back to what has been so common that we've seen this season after really just kind of confounding UCLA performance and Kamari Moulton as well after that first quarter fumble to be able to respond and have that long touchdown. And then defensively, without Jermari Harris, TJ Hall, he had an interception, stepped in well. I thought the secondary as a whole against what was a really good Maryland passing attack did a good job of shutting them down as much as possible. There's a few leaks there in the second half, but for the most part, it was a good job. And then the defensive line, Max Llewellyn, he had a really good game. Jay Higgins with an interception, coming off that hamstring injury, showing some grit. So, this is not a win that is going to change the entire narrative of Iowa's season by any stretch, but they finally go on the road. We've talked about the road woes. They lost the last three on the road since that Minnesota game and got it done, finally put together a more consistent performance. So it was just, I think it kept the wheels from entirely falling off, and you can feel better going into Nebraska.
Well, yeah, let's just talk about the big picture stuff. I mean, obviously 58 carries and 14 passes was the game plan. It worked out well. If that doesn't work out well, then you have to rely on Jackson Stratton to throw the football to bring you back, and that was just not what they wanted. So it really went exactly how Kirk Ferentz planned, and staff, just to try to control the clock, and they obviously did. Their first three drives were double-digit plays, and they consumed a little over 20 minutes total in those three drives. So it was extremely beneficial to keep the defense off the field. Jay Higgins talked about that. Basically, they were on the sideline the whole first half. So that's part of the reason the defense played so well. They weren't out there much. And but yeah, let's talk big picture, because that's certainly like that was the big talking point in post game. Who was here and who wasn't, basically. And I thought you guys should check out the Jay Higgins video for sure. I'm going to be kind of centering my column on just the fact that the guys that were here really wanted to win. And so it was notable, some of the comments that he made. Let me try to find one or two of them here. He basically said, he basically played through injury and just said, everybody was ready to go. My job really is to make sure that the guys that were going to go were all on the same page. I feel like we've got one of the best locker rooms in the country, and it's easy to lead guys like that. We all were hungry to get out here. Today you saw a hungry team excited to go out there and win a game. Not everybody is even in the headspace to play, of playing or not. My job is to make sure that the guys that do play are ready to go. So, that was kind of, he was probably the most pointed, I guess, in terms of, the guys that wanted to be here were here. And it showed. I mean, I felt like it was you could tell that the team, had Jackson Stratton's back, and it was their best road, wire-to-wire road game of the season. I mean, Minnesota had a good second half, but they've trailed at half in every single one of the road games until today. They're up 13-0.
Yeah, and giving a shout out to the offensive line as well, without Jennings Dunker, Nick DeYoung sliding in there. And I mean, especially in that first half, Iowa was just doing whatever it wanted with the offensive line, with getting Kaleb Johnson going, and then Kamari Moulton breaking free in the second half. But I feel like it was just more consistent. Like we've seen flashes of this on the road up to this point. The last 3 games, the first half against Ohio State, the first some points of that UCLA games, very, I guess, in a more limited sense against Michigan State, but it just looked like a drastically different team on the road than at home. And this was finally kind of, it felt like Iowa finding a little bit more level in their playing, in that performance of not just having these drastic swings, because when Maryland was coming back a little bit in the second half, you're wondering, like, is this going to end up being another just road collapse where Iowa, can't seem to put games away or just continue to play with some level of consistency. And but they were able to put it away. The defense, those 2 takeaways in the second half were really big. One with TJ Hall, the other with Jay Higgins, both getting interceptions, and then Kamari Moulton, just basically shut the door on with that long touchdown run. And something we failed to mention up to this point was Drew Stevens, who would just really, really good. And this was the point of the season last year where he started a sharp decline. That was just a really tough end of the season where, the last regular season game, he was benched and then didn't get the kick in the Big Ten championship or the bowl game. But he has made it a point of emphasis that he wanted to finish this season strong because he was in a similar position last season and he didn't. And, we're seeing, I think, some of that maturity pay off now as he is finishing this season strong at least now with 2 games to go. He seems to be trending towards that direction.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought Drew Stevens up because he made the post game cut of the 5 guys that we got to interview. 3 on offense, 1 on special teams, 1 on defense. Richmond, Johnson, Stratton on offense. Stevens, and he made from 54, he made from 50, he made from 49, and some of those were like 4th and short that Kirk decided to kick a long field goal. And I kind of joked with him afterwards. I was like, it's kind of like, when Kirk used to lean on Torrey Taylor to kind of salt away some of these games, with punts. He really kind of leaned on Drew Stevens 3 points at a time on long kicks, and he trusted him. And that trust was certainly rewarded. Drew Stevens 17 points out of 29 today, outscored Maryland by himself, and also he was proud that he had that late tackle. Let's talk about a few of the guys that weren't here that did come up in post game. Jermari Harris, let's start with him. Kurt clarifying that Jermari made the call not to play in this one with a lingering injury. It's one of those deals where Ferentz talked about there's 3 areas or 3 places where the player has to get cleared. Medical staff, which if they don't clear you, it's a no-go no matter what. Then the coach can decide not to play you, over a health concern, hold you out for a week. And he said the player also can say he's not ready to go. And that's he did say that is where the Harris thing stands. So I think that lends credence to the fact that he's, maybe unlikely to play again. That's kind of the some of the reporting out there that he is not going to play again this season. Iowa has not taken it that far. Jermari has not made an announcement. But basically Kirk Ferentz saying that, it's kind of, we'll see if he can be ready to go by Friday against Nebraska. So, give credit to TJ Hall, right? And Deshaun Lee. They, Maryland's passing game. Granted, Billy Edwards was kind of banged up and came in and out of the lineup, but I thought they did a good job. And hey, TJ Hall, first career pick today.
Even with the idea that Jermari would be available, this seemed like a real trouble. Could have been a real red flag for Iowa just because of how good Maryland's passing game had been. And then when you take him out of the equation, even more so. But I thought they both did a good job, and credit to TJ Hall because this has surely not been the smoothest of seasons for him. He began the season starting opposite of Jermari Harris, then has kind of been in and out with Deshaun Lee and John Nestor to a lesser extent getting reps. But that was a really good play he made on that interception to be able to pull it down. It came at an important time when Maryland was kind of trying to claw their way back into the game. And I thought both of those guys, Deshaun Lee and TJ Hall, as a tandem, they did a good job. There was a little bit, Maryland made some progress through the air in the second half, but overall it was a good defensive performance, especially on the road. There wasn't these kind of tackling issues that have cropped up in the UCLA game and Michigan State game. And I thought the defensive line was really good. I thought the pressure that they got on whoever was back there at quarterback for Maryland, it was really good. Max Llewellyn, I mentioned him. Ethan Hurkett had a really good game as well. I think this was by far, since at least that Minnesota game, this was the best road performance by Iowa's defensive line this season.
Yeah, that's a good point because that was something I can't remember if maybe it was you that said it. Somebody smart, so it must have been you. Said,
"Nah, I don't think it could have been me. You're mistaken for someone else."
Said, let's see if the defensive line, can neutralize Maryland's passing game with, the pass rush, and they did a great job. Hurkett had a good I'm just glad you brought that up because it did feel like that they did not give their quarterbacks too much time to throw, and heck, Maryland cuts it to 16-6 on the Ty Felton first of two TDs. And then on the 2-point try, Aaron Graves is in the backfield before the guy can even Morris, I believe, was in at that point, before he can even think. And that was big. 16-6 versus 16-8 at that point, you felt a lot better if you're an Iowa fan for sure. Now let's move into Cade McNamara. We haven't gotten to talk about this since, obviously, a very newsy Friday. Cade McNamara comes out. You don't hardly ever see this. Somebody came out with his own statement, not related to the university, and McNamara did that by saying that he had not been cleared to play, even though Kirk Ferentz said he had been cleared to play on Tuesday. That led to Iowa, several of us reached out to Iowa even before that statement came out, but especially after it to see what if any response the university had, and they did. And they said that Kirk Ferentz misspoke on Tuesday, and then that he was cleared to practice but not cleared to play. And Cade saying that he experienced a setback. Kirk Ferentz said he did not experience a setback on Tuesday. So a lot of misinformation. Confusing information going around right now, but we're just telling you what people are saying. We knew early in the week that it was going to be Stratton after the strange developments that took place from Monday through Tuesday afternoon, and so that's that. But after the game, Ferentz saying that McNamara, he basically just, instead of talking about where things stand and who said what, all this stuff, he just basically pointed to, he just hopes that folks can have sympathy for what Cade has gone through over the last 3 years, injury-wise. Obviously, none of these 3 years have panned out how Cade McNamara would have wanted, and so you do feel for him. We did. Scott and I talked about that on the Legends and Listeners pod. That you have to be considerate of somebody going through head injury. It's a brain bruise. And so, certainly hope that he starts feeling better soon, and that it's unlikely probably that he comes back, but he said that he hopes to come back for the Nebraska game. That's kind of where things stand. And Kirk really, I would say, didn't get into the nature of the injury, severity of the injury, whatever, but he did kind of play to the sympathy and just wanted fans to have some compassion for Cade in the 3 years that he's experienced.
Yeah, at this point, it's just kind of like a he said, she said type thing. And I think really the best course of action for Iowa, as much as it can at this point, is just to leave it be and move on from it, because it can continue to become a lingering thing if there's just continue to be contradicting statements and stuff of that nature. So, I think that's why just the fact that it seemed like Jackson Stratton just brought some just stability today, right? Because you were just wondering, like,
great point.
How much? I mean, just with the fact that you have Marco Linus out there with a cast basically on his hand and wrist, and he's your second best option at quarterback, and but it felt like Jackson Stratton just kind of provided that stability that Iowa needed. This was, I think, about the best case scenario for Iowa in terms of the way the game could have gone. You rely on Kaleb Johnson, you get a nice dose of Kamari Moulton, and Jackson Stratton's efficient. He doesn't turn the ball over, and all the trains were running on time. He didn't seem the moment did not seem too big for him whatsoever. So with all of this, as Kirk Ferentz said on Tuesday, a clearly cloudy quarterback situation, Jackson Stratton just looked poised. He looked ready for the moment. He delivered, and this is, I mean, we've talked about it before, but preferred walk-on, Colorado State. It seemed to a certain extent like a deja vu from the Deacon Hill kind of a guy coming in who you had no thought that he was going to get meaningful snaps, and now here he is. But credit to him for being ready. It's benefit to him that he had the bye week now to kind of really get his footing. But I thought he did a phenomenal job in what have been some difficult circumstances.
Yeah, and it was, I don't know if you could tell on TV, but it was really windy here. It was not an easy day to throw the football. I think that played to Iowa's advantage defensively and maybe offensively, because Stratton does have an arm. Somebody, one of the DI guys asked him afterwards, hey, what do you think you bring to this team? And he's like, well, I got a big arm. That was the first thing he said. And, he did kind of cut some of those early throws through the wind. I thought, Tim Lester gave him a very simple game plan. You could tell, hey, strong throws to the outside. Jacob Gill had a couple of those. Jarrett Bowie had a couple of those. They weren't big gainers. And they didn't really have him throw over the middle much. I don't know if you noticed that, Tyler, but they kept kind of his throws to the sideline, I think, kind of kept it out of traffic in the middle of the field. That was at least what it seemed like. And that allowed, maybe that's the way Maryland was playing it. But I just thought he was efficient, 10 for 14, 76 yards, and he didn't have to do really anything in the second half throwing the ball. And so, and no turnovers by him. I mean, the only turnover was, Moulton punting the ball forward, which he got a 13-yard carry for, which some of us in the press box were joking he was going to get a 100-yard game because of that. He does get 12 carries for 114. So he did get 100 on his own. But yeah, how about that? 2 100-yard rushers as well. So yeah, got perfect game plan offensively all around.
And just to see, I mean, I just felt a little bit more skeptical about the run game after the UCLA game, because it seemed like teams had kind of, you can just key so much on stopping Kaleb Johnson at this point, because Iowa's passing game kind of is what it is. It's not going to be explosive. They might be able to hit on some short gainers, but the fact that we saw Iowa's offensive line really dictate the terms of the game. I mean, this game, I think, for the most part, by Iowa was won in the trenches. It was won on the offensive line, defensive line, both of those. Iowa dominated in both of those, aspects. And now that's going to be, can they carry that over to Nebraska? Because this Nebraska game, forget the fact that, this season has not gone how each one of those teams wanted, but this is going to be, I think, what you would expect out of Iowa-Nebraska game. Really, a lot of passion, a lot of intensity, a lot of physicality. So, it's now setting up for, it's not going to have the stakes of a potential playoff implications that we thought potentially it could have earlier in the season. But, there's still going to be that same kind of fire and passion, in Kinnick.
Yeah, I agree. And Nebraska, as we speak here, is polishing off a win against Nebraska. So the Huskers will be coming to Kinnick Stadium with a 6-5 record.
Wisconsin, right?
Wait, what did I say?
You said they were beating Nebraska.
Oh, Nebraska's beating Wisconsin. I'm sorry.
Nebraska has beaten Nebraska before, but
that's fair.
That has happened a lot, especially under Scott Frost. But
that's fair.
Not today.
they're going to be 6-5. Iowa's going to be 7-4. So if you want to think about bowl games, Hawkeye fans, this is probably a play-in game for the ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa would be my guess, because Nebraska, if they move to 7-5, will probably get the nod over Iowa at 7-5. That fan base, obviously, dying to go to a bowl game, and now they will. And so, but if the Hawkeyes beat them, 8-4 is going to trump 6-6. So if you do want to, I know a lot of people have asked about bowl games. We haven't talked about it hardly at all, but that's pretty much the situation. And Nebraska looks like they've got some momentum today too. So they're up 44-25 here in the last couple minutes of that ball game, as far as I can tell. It'll be interesting. And Kirk Ferentz did kind of leave the door open to Brendan Sullivan potentially coming back against Nebraska. He said his rehab's going really well. I saw him after the game. He made the trip. He was in good spirits. He was really supporting Jackson, by the way. It was really kind of cool to see, because that's not something that not all the quarterbacks were here, and so Sullivan was really in his corner. I think you feel like that's probably going to be the 1-2 punch, for sure for the bowl game in some order, and we'll see about the Nebraska game. I would highly doubt that McNamara plays, just based on what I know. But we'll see. We will see. Should we do some 3-word headlines, Tyler? I need to call them up, though. So if you want to talk about something else for a minute, you can.
No, I was just going to say, it's to think about the fact that 9 wins for Iowa is still on the table after this, just what's been an absolute roller coaster of a season is kind of crazy to think about. And not that I would put money on them getting to 9 wins, but it's still on the table right now. And also the fact that I don't know exactly what Vegas was predicting, but I think they had Iowa probably around 8 wins, and I was close to there at this point. I don't know, the way that the season has unfolded, it hasn't felt as emphatic. I guess maybe we had higher expectations for what Iowa could do because of, we knew how many guys were coming back and on defense and stuff like that. So maybe we just had that kind of perspective on it versus maybe the national perspective. But I mean, Iowa still can win 9 games. They can still, that's still on the table. Would be, they can overperform what some people nationally were expecting, so that's still a possibility at this point.
Yeah. 3-word headlines. Some great ones today. Great ones. Cody Hill's now beat Nebraska. A lot of people like that one. Tim Klender, I'm sorry if I don't know how the name goes there. Kluender has a lot of them. 2-score milker. That's a famous Mark Morehouse phrase about once Kirk gets up 2 touchdowns or 2 scores, that he just kind of tries to hang on for dear life. That's how it felt, didn't it? I mean, once they got up 10-0, 13-0, he just didn't feel like he wanted to do anything. He was completely risk averse the rest of the way.
I almost felt like Iowa State vibes from the game.
No, it was 19-13 at one point too. I was like, oh, don't lose this 20-19. I can't take it. I can't take writing about that.
And it was because too, just that it felt like Iowa could have been up by a lot more in the first half because the Moulton fumble, and they were relying on the field goals. They weren't great in punching it in, around the red zone or getting into Maryland territory. So I felt like it could have been headed that direction, but it didn't end up going that way.
I wonder if here's an interesting question. If Sully, now he probably wouldn't be as mobile, so maybe it's a stupid idea, but could Sully be Stratton's red zone quarterback next week? I mean like limited?
But the thing is,
I'm only half kidding. Like
I just feel, but now I feel more confident about what Stratton can do. Like I think obviously you want Brendan Sullivan back, but like I don't feel like it's like we have to get Sullivan back, and even if he's playing at 65% or whatever, like I think Stratton has now shown enough to where that he can run the offense and that Iowa can win with him starting at quarterback. So I just feel like I feel so much less skeptical and more confident about what Stratton can do.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I liked what he did out there. I mean, it gives me confidence. It makes me want to see more. I mean, he was 4 for 17 at Colorado State. He was 10 for 14 today. That's pretty good.
And he did get sacked.
I know.
Streak is over.
What was the quote, Tyler?
He said pocket mobile, and he was like, he won't get sacked or something like that. But I will say,
he said, I don't ever get sacked or something.
The first,
I got to find it.
When he got sacked in the very first sack, he didn't stand much of a chance. Like that,
No, that wasn't his.
So it wasn't. So we will void that. We will take that.
Okay.
Off the Hawk Central stat sheet, that will not be recorded as.
We're not going to count it, huh?
No.
Okay. No. Okay. I'm going to call it the quote here because it's such a good one. I'm very accurate with a good arm, and then I'm just pocket mobile. I'm not going to get sacked. I'm not the fastest guy in the world, but I'm not going to get sacked. I'm going to put the ball where it needs to be. That's what he said. He kind of did that.
No, the funny thing is, like, that's pretty spot on.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
That is pretty spot on to what we've seen. And like, I remember hearing, like, when he said that, I'm just like, okay, we'll see. Like, is this dude, just blowing smoke? But hey, no, he's backed it up. So credit to him.
Yeah. I mean, you're the smartest guy in America for doing a story on him in June.
I mean, no offense to him, but like I was twiddling my thumbs in June, and I was like, let me just DM this guy and like see if he'll respond, and he did. So
yeah, Shaggy, Morgs, we appreciate her. She says, "Cannot believe it." I'm not sure which part, but maybe that they won by 16 with Shaggy.
I can't believe it either, and I don't know what they're talking about.
I can't believe where we are.
There's very few things that I believe at this point on this beat. So
I like this one from Jeffrey the Greek. Drew leg day. It was leg day for Drew Stevens. No kidding. Yeah. Some of those kicks were good from I bet they could have been good from 70.
Yeah, and it's like some of the ones he missed from 50 plus earlier this season. It wasn't. It was side to side. It was side to side. It wasn't the length. Like, he's had plenty of leg on all these kicks. Those ones that he missed were just, a little off center, but he can really he can clobber the ball.
Brent Byer maybe has the best one. It says Shaggy solves mystery.
That's a good one.
How about that?
That's good.
That's not bad at all. TC Hawkeye fan opting for victory. Maybe a spin on opting out. Hawkeyes did that. Yeah, some of these, enjoyed the win. Shaggy flips turtles. I like that one. Troy Vandermolen. Courtney says, winning through adversity, and in parentheses, the Iowa way. Jeremy Wilson's tough, smart, discipline. This was really a Kirk Ferentz win, wasn't it? I mean, just a classic rally the troops. He's done this so many times. Rally the troops, gets the guys to pull together and win. That's going to be kind of the theme of my column, not to spoil it, but just sort of like the locker room was not lost, which a lot of people were theorizing earlier this week.
And that's what I think has made this season so head scratching, is that we haven't seen that with the regularity that we're used to. Like the UCLA loss, the Michigan State loss, those both were, and even the Iowa State loss, really, they were so winnable. Like they were right there in front of Iowa. And I think particularly the UCLA and Michigan State games, it just seemed like it was a mental thing more than it was physical. And that's what has made Iowa's season just not on brand to Iowa. But this was a game where, Iowa hadn't been good on the road. There's a lot of stuff, in terms of guys playing, not playing. But they did come together. They did play well. It seemed like unity. The team seemed like they came together, and it was a unification of things. One team moving towards one goal, and then they accomplished it.
Yeah, and now they come home on Black Friday at home against Nebraska. There'll be a lot at stake in that game in terms of bragging rights, trophy. I mean, there's a lot to play for, I think, in that game. I mean, 8-4 is going to sound way better than 6, 7, and 5 to me. After this season, you don't want it to feel like 2014 again, where you lost like the season finale against Nebraska at home to drop to 7-5. Then came the Hawk Slayer Bowl. So We didn't talk about Kirk and Brian. Did we talk about Kirk and Brian on here? I can't remember.
No.
Yeah. So Tom Kakert asked Kirk after the presser, "Hey, did you get to see Brian?" He said, "No, I haven't." And then they kind of shuttled him into a Maryland building. So I think that he was probably going to go see him. Don't know that for sure. But it became a non-story. I did get to say hi to Brian in the press box. He was very cordial, very fun. And then it was funny because Lester was coming out of the restroom at that point, right before the game, and then they introduced themselves to each other. So it was kind of funny. Like they had never met. So I was like, "Hey, Tim Lester, Brian Ferentz." It was kind of weird, like to see the coordinator meeting for the first time, like right before my eyes. So anyway, I didn't stay and listen to their conversation, obviously, but he was here in Maryland stuff and very pleasant. So I'm out there on the field a little bit. And yeah, so Brian Ferentz was here.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of like worlds colliding, right? They're just like alternate universes of, but no, I mean, it's good. I'm glad for Kirk Ferentz just because I can't imagine how difficult that would be as a human being to go through what he has the last year of just that, the relationship with your son just being so picked at, on a national scale.
Right.
And
it was.
and then he said ahead of this matchup, which there was a lot, it seemed like less attention on it just because of all the quarterback talk, but he said basically like this isn't a great time for a family reunion. Like he tried to keep it business. Like he said he's tried to separate family and business, but like he's human. I'm sure he can't cut that off clearly. 100%. So the fact that he is able just be a father. And if he was able to see Brian, if he was able to spend some time with him after the game, after the fact, I'm happy for Kirk to be able to have that moment.
Good show, Tyler. Thanks for pitching in. I know it's been a long day for you, so thank you. For Tyler Tachman and Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register, I'm going to be working on my column tonight. Have it out for you in the morning. We'll say so long from now from College Park on Hawk Central.